Thermostat probes should be on the cool end. And
what?
The fact is, the literature from these manufacturers is incorrect. They use the technology that they didn't develop. Thermostats were developed by, meteorologists. They were always meant to measure inside of a box, shielded from the sun. That's the only way they can give you accurate measurements. So really, thermostats are fail-safes. What spectrum a fluorescent puts out is dictated by the phosphors used on the lamp. And that's going to vary from lamp to lamp. It's what makes the new ExoTerra lamps have such an amazing spectrum. The phosphor formula that they're using is excellent. So you could have a T5 lamp that has an awful spectrum with like no UVA2 almost, and totally UVB, or even no UVB, or that's why we really depend on these third-party studies from people like Thomas and Serena and Francis to tell us which lamps are good and which lamps are not good, because there's terrible lamps out there.
This episode is brought to you by Sol Reptile. Sol Reptile is a boutique, direct-to-consumer lighting and husbandry company focused on bringing the latest reptile physiology and lighting science into the hobby. They're the creators of the Vision LED, the most powerful UVA1 LED available for reptile lighting. They also produce precisely tuned near-infrared systems designed for specialized animals, including invertebrates. If you're serious about replicating natural sunlight and dialing in your animal's environment, Sol Reptile is pushing that science forward. Sol Reptile, the science of the sun. This episode is brought to you in part by ExoTerra. If you're as passionate about reptiles and amphibians as I am, you know that quality matters. I use ExoTerra products on all my reptile and amphibian enclosures, which is why I'm excited to be partnering with them. From naturalistic decor to innovative lighting and enclosures of all sizes, ExoTerra has everything you need for your cold-blooded companions. ExoTerra, make your reptiles feel at home. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. I think I'll save those for the end. I don't know. You want to jump right into the Patreon questions? You want to be really weird? I know, like, most people normally wait until the end,
Yeah, but up to you. I'm good either way.
Yeah, I mean, let me see here. I wrote some of them down, but then Paul's was like so long, I just took a screenshot of it, Yeah. But so for anybody who doesn't know, well, first of all, how the hell do you pronounce your last name? So you go by Casey.
Casey,
right?
Casey? Yeah, Casey's fine. Yeah.
Okay, and then how do you pronounce it?
Omangan. Yeah. So it's actually my my family's original Irish name. My great grandparents anglicized it when they came to the United States. So The government name is Mangum. They anglicized it, but this is the original, which my cousins in Ireland still have.
Oh, wow. So for anybody who's, listening and not aware, you are the owner and founder of Sol Reptile, and you are a sponsor of the podcast, which is greatly appreciated. And I've been able to get some hands-on experience with some of your lights, which are really cool, top of the line lights. And I mean, well, before we kind of get into the nitty gritty of it all, I mean, how does one start designing? I mean, it's wild to me, like, that you've actually made reptile lights and you're selling them, so how does that, what does that look like, and how did you end up here?
Yeah. So I'm a general contractor. I build custom homes by trade, and I've built plenty of custom light fixtures for clients. So usually a lighting designer will draw something and then we'll build it based on that. So I've been building lights, essentially custom lights, for, I don't know, 10 years or so, maybe longer. And became pretty good friends with Thomas Griffiths. And we were talking about things that are lacking in the reptile lighting world, reptile industry. And what came up was UVA-1 LEDs. And the more we talked about it, the more I was like, dude, I could make that. That doesn't seem that crazy. I was wrong. It was a lot harder than I thought it would be. But it ultimately panned out. It was well over a year, close to 2 years before it hit the market. It was a lot of testing. So finding the proper white LEDs wasn't so bad. I just went through tons and tons of data sheets looking for spectrums that looked closest to the sun that I could find. The UVA part was really tough. So it started with me just loading every UVA, everything between 365 and 405 nanometers, throwing it on a light and sending it out to Thomas, and him basically saying, no, this is garbage. And we feel like, okay, great. But just if you did this and this, so I'd take his considerations. It ultimately ended up on me putting UVA diodes and then putting dimmers on each individual diode, which dimming LEDs is not the easiest thing in the world. So I had all these dimmers. I sent the first one out to him. The British government thought it was a bomb and disassembled it entirely and completely broke it. So that one didn't work. Yeah. So he got it, but it was completely disassembled with like a warning thing in it that basically said, look, we had to take this apart, and it did not function at that point. I remember when I sent a picture too, he's like, that looks like a bomb. I was like, kind of does. So luckily I kind of tightened up the second one and put some labeling on it to make it a little more obvious. That one made it to him, and he was able to dial it in really well and get the spectrum that he wanted, that looks really, a lot like the sun to reptiles. He was talking about that on last time he was on your podcast. And he almost burned it down, or almost melted it, from what I understand. I didn't know about that till he did your podcast, and I was like, oh, awesome. But it worked out. So we basically took that rough prototype, and I had an engineer help me with this because I really wanted to get it right. I did my measurements on it, and the engineer did his measurements on it, so then we could know exactly how much current to give these individual UVA diodes, because it's not enough just to have a bunch of UVA on next to white diodes. It needs to be in proportion, so it's like the sun. So each UVA diode is driven entirely separate. So like most LEDs you get just have one driver, and it just drives the diodes. Mine has 6 drivers in the one light, which is really why it's so expensive to make and sell.
This episode is brought to you by Chewy. Most people think of Chewy for dog and cat food, but if you keep reptiles, you should absolutely be using them too. Chewy carries everything from all the brands you trust, like Exoterra, Arcadia, Zoomed, and everything in between. Live feeders to frozen rodents, enclosures, substrate, heat lamps, thermostats, water bowls, misters, and more. All in one place, shipped straight to your door. Sign up for Chewy Plus today, free for 30 days. You get free shipping, 5% rewards, and exclusive offers. I use Chewy, and you should too. For anybody that is listening and not educated, to these sort of terms and everything, The diode is essentially maybe like what you would call the bulb, right? That's what's
Yeah.
emitting the light. LED
Yeah.
stands
Yeah.
for light emitting diode, correct?
Yeah. So these little, the camera might not be able to pick it up very well. There we go. Each little dot is a diode. And that's essentially how LED lights work. It's a bunch of diodes together.
Hmm. So, and how many diodes are on that light that you just held up right there?
It's 24 white diodes and 6 UVA diodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. And so kind of going back into your, history and everything, like what got you into reptiles? And then, I know you kind of touched on that you were kind of doing this professionally in your line of work, right? So you maybe had like sort of a simplistic view of how
Yeah.
you'd be able to go, approach this situation. It ended up being more complex than you thought. But what got you into reptiles and down the road of lighting?
Yeah. So reptiles originally, I grew up in LA, in the north part of LA, basically at the foot of the like Angeles Mountains, San Gabriel Mountains. My older brothers, who were all 10 plus years older than me, took care of a big property up in the mountains. So I was up in the mountains quite a bit growing up, catching snakes and lizards. And my parents would let me keep them, which was, looking back, terrible because I did not know what I was doing. But it did at least nurture a love for the animals. I had snakes, tarantulas, lizards, all kinds of things. I stopped, I think, in my teenage years. I didn't keep so much. In my 20s, I kept some ball pythons and some newts. Then stopped again a bit in my 30s. In my mid 30s or so, got into poison dart frogs initially. And then somebody in my neighborhood had a bearded dragon in their backyard. So I went and got that and started learning about it. And I was like, oh yeah, lights are pretty important for these guys. When I was keeping snakes, we just needed a heat light, and that's all we would do, especially when I was in my 20s. That was in the early 2000s. One heat light and that was even more than a lot of people were giving their snakes.
Yeah.
So it was a big learning curve. I knew for dart frogs, we were super into having the best plant lights we could have. So I was already into the reptile lighting group before I had any reptiles again. Just because through the dart frog group, the name came up. And just kind of went down. I've always liked lights, and it's always been interesting to me. So when I got the bearded dragon, I kind of went down the rabbit hole of UV and sun replication, essentially, which I knew was important from keeping dart frogs and doing lights. I had a friend who had a grow house, which is legal here in California, and I would help him with lights quite a bit. Wow. So sun replication was important, but we were always only worried about basically from 400 nanometers to 800 nanometers. And then it just opened up the world like, oh no, the sun replication is about a lot more than that. I mean, it goes all the way from 280 nanometers to roughly 3000 nanometers. So trying to replicate the sun in that large bandwidth actually got me more excited and made it a lot more interesting to me.
Is that something you guys were doing for plants, was trying to replicate the sun, or do plants only need very specific wavelengths?
So traditionally, plants were only worried about 400 nanometers to about 800 nanometers. They call it the McCree curve. It was a scientist, I think in the 40s or 50s, that kind of developed this spectral curve, that he figured out was the best way to get plant growth. And it's been basically the law since then, the McCree curve. And it's really only between 400 and 800. And they also call it the photosynthetic active radiation PAR. But now people are learning a lot more, and they're using what's called EPAR, extended photosynthetic active radiation. So people are using, in the plant world, high-end lights that do have UVA, that dip down into UVA and even into infrared, because they're discovering that providing a broader spectrum, a full spectrum, has a lot of benefits for plants.
That only makes sense, right? If all these things evolved under the sun and to grow under them, like you might be able to get by with certain things, but if you aren't giving that full spectrum, you're probably missing out on something, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. The sun is really the life giver of the earth. Without it, we wouldn't have any energy hitting the earth, and energy for us to utilize. I mean, the plants, grow on the sun. The animals eat the plants. The sun really is the life giver. So yeah, and there's, most living things use most spectrum of the sun. And every time a new report comes out about a certain section of wavelength from the sun being tested on plants or animals, we do discover, oh yeah, I guess they do use that. So even the wavelengths we tend to neglect, I'm sure there's a ton of things that we just don't know that it does yet.
Yeah. And so let's kind of just hearing that makes me think about nocturnal animals, and it's a hard sell when an animal is naturally nocturnal and you're trying to educate or convince somebody that there is benefit to that animal having lighting, which can sometimes be expensive.
Yeah.
It often is, right? So
Yeah,
like that's kind of the biggest hurdle with lighting is like, yeah, you should provide UVA and UVB and all these things for your animal. And then, I think people are often left perplexed if the animal is nocturnal, so how do you make that argument, and how does that benefit a nocturnal animal?
Yeah, sure. So I feel like the words diurnal, nocturnal, and even crepuscular, we like these nice tidy baskets for animals to fit into, but nocturnal animals will be awake in the day and will peek outside. Diurnal animals will wake up at night. Crepuscular animals will do everything in between. So these hard, fast boundaries don't actually exist in nature like that. Beyond that, though, even these nocturnal animals that do spend the vast majority of their time sleeping during the day, even in their hides, light bounces, and especially infrared A bounces quite a bit. So in a forest, like deep in a forest, you'll actually get proportionally more infrared A down in the mid canopy and then even the forest floor than you would proportionally if you were up above the trees. So even when they're hiding in hides, this light is bouncing and it's still getting to them. And I've seen, just from knowing tons of people with deeply nocturnal animals, they do cryptic bask. I mean, it's something pretty common that we see in the hobby is this cryptic basking.
Interesting. And so do you think that, like, if you had like a knobtail gecko or something that's, really active at night and hides all day long, that they still benefit from having that lighting provided during day periods?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the animal has eyes. So any animal that doesn't ever utilize the sun for any purpose, the eyes tend to go away and they become like a cave creature, and they're salamanders with no eyes at all.
Yeah.
So they're for sure in the wild utilizing the sun, and if they're utilizing the sun, they're going to get the sun's benefits. And even if they're in the hide all day, that light is still bouncing in there. It's still regulating hormones in their head. It's still interacting with their skin, their dermis, and still interacting with them biologically, even if they're hiding from the direct exposure.
Yeah. How do you think we go about getting more people on board with lighting? Because I feel like it is one of the uh, one of the biggest hurdles to overcome is that so many people have animals that are doing well and thriving and reproducing and having successful clutches and all these other things. And, but is it the most ideal situation to not provide light for them? In my opinion, no. But how do we move forward with that without, I guess, shaming people?
Yeah.
And which is often the biggest hurdle to overcome is that, it often comes across as, sort of belittling and,
Right.
Shaming and trying to, and that's never going to win people over. That's never going to get anybody to do anything by coming at it from that perspective. So how do we go about providing the evidence that there is benefit to it and that you'll have a happier animal by providing, specialized lighting?
Right. Yeah, that's tough. So everyone's different. So what convinces one person is not going to convince another person. And forcing it down people's throats is not going to convince anybody. So really just having the evidence. For some people, it's going to be scientific papers. When they see papers, they're going to be like, okay, I think I see the benefits. It's clear in the science. It's clear in the data. I think it's worth me trying it. For other people, they're going to want to see people that they trust and know utilizing it to good result. For everybody, it's going to be a little different. I think, like you said, though, just resisting the urge to force people or tell people that it's the only way. That's a surefire way to get them to shut down and be like, it's clearly not the only way because my animals are fine.
Yeah.
So any kind of attitudes like that, I mean, with anything, not just lights, with any part of the reptile world is a sure way to keep people from ever coming over to your side.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the hardest thing to navigate. And recently I sort of had this, come up as you're aware. And I see these things happen and it's so off-putting to me, and I might not even be the target. I mean, I could partially be the target. But just to look at it and be like, dude, you're never going to get anywhere by behaving this way. You're never going to get a friend by doing this. You're never going to convince somebody. And ultimately, I guess one of the hardest things too is like, you can't control what everybody is doing. And if you think that everybody's snake should have UVB and you're going to hate them if they don't, and they're this evil person if they don't provide that, it makes it, you're going to make yourself really unhappy, and the other person just won't care, and then you're kind of approaching it from a standpoint where you're not going to be able to communicate with them effectively to be able to say like, hey, you know what, maybe I should work on, larger enclosures and provide a more full spectrum lighting setup.
Yeah. Being aggressive about it is the best way to be the other point of view's ally. And like, if you don't want people doing what you want, then be aggressive about it, because at that point, nobody's going to do what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's
so
tough.
Let's get into, like how is UVA and UVB, different? And how are they equally as important? Because I feel like UVB up until fairly recently has gotten the spotlight, if you will. And like UVB is sort of the go-to that everybody thinks of, right? Is like, I need my heat source and my UVB, and then I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And so how is UVA important, and sort of how are those two different?
Yeah. So when people say UVB, they unknowing are actually talking about UVB and UVA too. So we need, because the big reason UVB D3 synthesis, that's so important, especially, for some animals, they'll die without it. But we need the UVB to get the body to synthesize, and we need the UVA2 to get the body to stop synthesizing, because if it synthesizes too much, they can get hypervitaminosis, which has been the concern with the UVB LEDs, is that there's not really much or any UVA2, and it's all UVB. So the it's just synthesizing and just making D3. So you need both. Essentially, so that's UVA2 and UVB. You need them together. Right now, T5s are really the best form, the most sun-like form of those two. UVA1 is a totally different thing. It's 100% not necessary for them to live. They're not going to die without it in any way, shape, or form. But it's more of a welfare thing. Basically, all reptiles are capable of seeing UVA1. So like humans, we have red, green, and blue cones. And for us to see what appears like white light or sunlight, we need all three of those cones stimulated. Reptiles need their UVA cones stimulated for things to appear like white light to them or appear like sunlight. For a lot of lizards, they have 4 cones. They'll have the red, greens, and blues and the UVA. A lot of snakes are actually just dichromats. So they've got one inside our normal color spectrum range, and they've got one in UVA. So it's kind of interesting that they've evolved to only have 2, but UVA is one of them. So it must be important for them. But without those UVA cones being stimulated, it's not, to any reptile, it's not going to look like white light. It's going to look like a colored light to them, which a lot of people freak out about these colored lights. And like, oh, you're going to make them blind, and it's no red lighting, no green lighting. You're going to blind your animal. Well, yeah, colored lighting is not great, but I mean, unless you're providing UVA, you're essentially providing colored light to your animal. It doesn't look like the sun to them. So people need to calm down with the oh, you're gonna make them blind. It's just not true. It's just not ideal.
Wow. So what the heck? What are they seeing, and why is it so? Why is what reptiles see so different from what we see? Because I look at an enclosure with a heat lamp and a UVB light in it, and I go, oh, I can see the color of the plants, the color of the coconut husk and the basking platform, and it's all very different to me and visually stimulating. But for them, it's radically different, right?
Yeah. Essentially, it would be like if you were living in a room with a colored bulb. So it would just change the way you see everything. If you were, in a room with a red light eating cereal, it would look like you were having cereal and tomato juice. It just looks different. So I would pay $1 million if I could see what they're actually seeing. What does UVA look like? Yeah. But whatever it is, it's not what it looks like to them in the wild. So any of these, which we do know a lot of lizards have UVA, things that reflect UVA on their scales, these patterns, which, could help in mating displays. Certain food items have, bounce UVA off. There's all kinds of things that they use UVA to interact with the world around them. They learn how to cope without it, and it's fine, but it's certainly an advantage for them if they can see things properly.
And now what if you have like a window open and there's ambient light coming from outside into the room? Does that help the way that they are viewing the room? Does that help them in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. So UVB doesn't go through windows, but UVA1 does go through windows fairly effectively. So having a nice bright room from windows is definitely going to help their vision. It's got its own worries. If the sun's coming right in, it can kind of create a greenhouse effect, which can mess with all your temps and things like that. But if you can find a way to introduce a lot of natural light into your room, that's going to provide the UVA1 that they're missing. Whether or not it's in the proportions, because you've got, this artificial light in the enclosure, and then there's just this tiny bit of UVA1 sneaking in. It may not be doing that perfectly, but any additional UVA1 is good there.
Okay. And how do you feel about where we are with what we know as far as scientific studies and lighting for reptiles? Like, I feel like we just need so much more, and I want so much more, just so I can know the benefits of what's being provided, but also the potential like detriment, right? Because from time to time you hear about, what was it? I was talking with Thomas Marriott, and he was talking about the bearded dragons and they didn't have a high enough heat for their basking spot. So they were spending too much time under the UVB bulbs.
Yeah.
And it was causing, these ocular tumors. Yeah. So like that's really scary. Right. And you don't want people to hear that and be off put by providing proper husbandry. And I would definitely define that as improper husbandry, that those bearded dragons were in that situation. But at the same time, you have to imagine from the keeper standpoint, they were doing the best they could,
right? The knowledge they had.
Yeah. Or they thought that they were doing a good job. So essentially, like what's the ideal setup for a snake or a lizard as far as setting up lighting and doing it so it is in a safe manner and you don't run into issues like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So studies are great, and we do need more studies, but we've got a lot that have taught us a whole lot, and more will come out, and we'll learn more things. But the best way to avoid any of this is just aiming after sun replication, which means being proportional. So in the case of those bearded dragons that Thomas was talking about, it was not proportional. It had way too much UV and not enough infrared. And if we're offering proportional sunlight, we're not going to have these issues like that. There is, on Reptile Lighting, they have a graphic out now that kind of sets parameters for different Ferguson zone animals. So if you're dealing with something like a bearded dragon, you're going to want to have 300 to 350 watts per meter squared on the infrared, a UVI of 3 to 5, and a lux around 30,000 or so. And that's all fairly proportional with the sun. If you have something like a ball python, it's going to be, all of those levels are going to drop. And really, measuring infrared with a power meter is really the best way to go about that. But there is a lot of these power density charts coming out, so you can use those to kind of estimate what your power density will be. Temperature, doing surface temperature gets you close, but it's a clumsy way to measure an incandescent light, because depending on your surface, you're measuring if it's light, if it's dark, is it dense, is it porous. You're going to get wildly different temperatures from your therm gun, even though it's under the same bulb, the same distance. And ultimately, all that matters is really the amount of infrared coming down. The temperature of the item they're basking on doesn't matter so much, and other than it being not too hot for them to sit on. So really, proportionality is the name of the game, and just learning how to keep all of your light sources proportional. And sometimes it takes, some expensive tools to do that if you want to get creative, but there are charts out there that, can tell you what's the UVI of this light at 16 inches? What's the power density of this light at 16 inches?
So are we coming at it from the wrong? Everybody has a temp gun, right? And like that's how we check our temps. Are we coming at it from the wrong? Are we measuring the wrong thing?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. So this is probably the biggest change in the last few years of reptile lighting is how we measure a basking area. The surface temperature thing it only gives you so much info. All it tells you is what is that surface temperature. You can roughly know how much infrared is coming down, but that's a pretty rough and kind of it's a rough measurement. It's not very. Especially if you're dealing with like a bearded dragon, it's almost more accurate just to put your hand under the lamp and feel the warmth of the light. And is it too much warmth or too little? That's almost more accurate than shooting the whatever surface you've got with a therm gun. So it is the biggest change, and I think it's going to be a while, but power meters are cheaper than solar meters. So I'm hoping these catch on.
How much are they about?
They're about $100. They can be 100, 130 right around there, which is, half the price, maybe even less than half the price of a solar meter.
Okay. And so what are you supposed to be measuring? Like what are you looking for when you go under a heat lamp?
So it measures in watts per meter squared. Most power density meters, I think all of them, it can measure BTUs or watts per meter squared. We like watts per meter squared. So you make sure you're on that. You need to turn off all other sources of light. So it only needs to be your heat lights, because these power meters, they're almost more like an extended lux meter in that they do actually measure the entire spectrum from 400 nanometers on. They were really developed for use in the solar industry. But we've kind of learned how to use them with incandescent. They work with incandescent lights really well. So you want to turn off your LEDs, turn off your T5s, put the meter under just like a solar meter, and see what neighborhood you're in, and compare that to the chart they have on reptile lighting, and see, it's a Ferguson Zone 2 animal. I want to be between this and this, and am I around that?
Wow.
Yeah, it's very handy because previous to those, I would help people set up enclosures and like, all right, now let's wait for 3 hours and come back with a temp gun and see how things look. And now I can help people set up enclosures and just like stick my hand in and, okay, that's where it should be. This is where it should be. This is where I have, all the meters to just check everything and walk away. And then I'll just ask them a few days later, okay, how are they behaving? Are they basking too much? Are they not basking enough? Are they, how are they behaving? Because all these parameters, they really are just a guide, and your animal's behavior is the ultimate determinant of where things should probably be.
Dude, that's wild. I had no idea. I thought that the temp gun was what we should all be using to set up a basking area. But it seems like I'm mistaken.
It'll get you in the neighborhood for sure. It'll get you in the neighborhood. You won't do anything egregious with, a temp gun, and that's worked for years and years and years. But the precision of a power meter is just, it's unmatched. It makes it light years easier to deal with all this stuff. I can, like, my last build I did for myself was for a chameleon, and I was able to basically just put my lighting set up in an empty chameleon enclosure and start taking measurements. And now I know exactly where to mount sticks, where to do everything, and just design that based on the readings I'm getting.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes life easy. And it's so much easier.
So how do we get, because I'm going to plead ignorance on this. I had no idea, man. Like, so how do we make this more mainstream? Because I feel like I know that the lighting world is it's a rabbit hole. I think we should say tortoise hole.
Yeah, there we go.
It's a real tortoise hole you can go down. But it's like, I feel like if you're not fully immersed in that world,
right,
you're not, every time I do a lighting podcast, I'm learning something new, and I'm like, wait, what? That's a thing, so, that's something that I was totally unaware of. So now what brand, meter are you using?
So in the US, the most common one you're going to get is called the DBTU 1300. In the UK, it's an RS. Oh man, I should have that memorized. It's an RS meter, but the one in the US is a DBTU 1300.
Okay.
Pretty available. It's a lot easier to find than solar meter. Like I said, it's for the solar panel industry, so it's around.
Okay.
And yeah, it was funny. I was doing a house and was meeting with our solar guy when we were in framing, and he comes out. And he's like, you know what? I don't have my meter with me. And I was like, actually, I happen to have mine. I was herping earlier. And he's like, what? Why do you have a solar meter? I was like, reptiles. It's a whole thing, man.
Oh man. Okay, so these are around $120 from General Tools. Is that
General
is that
Tools?
like
That's right. Yeah.
okay. All right, so there you go, folks. I'll try to put that in the show notes. I definitely want to check one of those out. I still haven't gotten a solar meter. I'm ashamed to say the 6.5, which I know I need to do that.
Yeah, they're great. So, I mean, the thing is, we do have tons of charts for all kinds of UV lamps. So it's not 100% necessary. It's a great tool to have. And it can, especially if you've got a lot of UV lights, it can save you money. I've essentially been able to hold on to lamps way longer than I would normally. And now what I end up doing, I have, high UV animals. And when the light starts dying down, I can just take those bulbs and put them on my low UV need animals and get a whole nother lifespan out of those same bulbs. And they do tend to last a lot longer. You know, the common practices or the safe practice is change your UVs once a year. But I typically see a lot more than a year from a single bulb. So if you have a lot of animals, it's a hefty expense up front, but some years down the line, you'll save a good chunk of money.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, $120 that I'm going to definitely be checking that out. It's the DBTU 1300 from General Tools. And so can you kind of I'm assuming that the more you use that, the more you get used to what you should be looking for. And I guess what would you be looking for like a boa constrictor?
So a boa constrictor, I believe you're going to be around 250 watts per meter squared. So Reptile Lighting does have a chart where it breaks down the individual Ferguson zones. I don't memorize it as often as I should, but
that's okay.
Usually I can refer to the chart. But a boa constrictor, pretty sure, is around 250 watts per meter squared. Okay. I have a Dumerils boa, and it's funny. Again, this is a guide. It's a starting point. I have a Dumerils boa, and everything you read about Dumerils boa has them pretty low on the Ferguson zone area. And I've played with it, and she outright basks when I've got it between 250 and 300, which is a lot warmer than most people have for their Dumerils boas. And she will just outright bask. So I've kind of leveled up the UV and the lux in her enclosure to be proportional to that. It's around 275 watts per meter squared to be proportionate with that. And in winter, she doesn't bask very often or even at all. But in summer, she's out every day, sometimes twice a day.
Wow. And now, do you hit it with your temp gun just to see what the temperatures are at with that reading?
Yeah, just out of curiosity sometimes. She basks. I mean, Dumerils boas are like long gophers. They really like being on the ground. I did all these amazing climbing opportunities for them, and she uses it maybe once a month. So I had a basking area initially, and she always just preferred the ground. So now I have just a blank spot of ground that she seems to like and be most comfortable in. She can kind of wiggle into the leaf litter a little bit, which they enjoy to do. And sometimes I'll hit the leaf litter. And honestly, if I hit soil or hit leaf litter, I'm going to get a different measurement.
Sure.
But I'm near 100 or so, sometimes even over 100.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I know that that's gonna kind of make some people uncomfortable, right? Because
Yeah.
it's weird that the pendulum, you spend any amount of time in the reptile hobby and you see the pendulum swing where it's oh, we keep them way too hot, and
Yeah.
then we keep them way too cool, and it's this constant sort of back and forth. I feel that we're always seeing. So I know that people are going to hear like, "What? You have your Dumerils boa, and it has a 100-degree basking spot, and it
Right.
sits there." Like that. That's going to blow people's minds. Because
Yeah.
it mildly blows my mind, but at the same time, I see my animals. Sometimes their basking spot will be 95 to 100, and they'll just sit there and soak it up.
Yeah. So, and they're all individuals too. So that's my Dumeril's boa. Yours may be entirely different. That's why starting with the guide from Reptile Lighting and then adjusting from there is really, really what you want to do. That guide is never going to put you in a dangerous situation. And then adjust based on behavior. I will say, so because she seems to like it so hot, I bump the humidity quite a bit to keep her shedding well. Because when this is like 2 years ago or so that I've got it set to that after a lot of playing around. And her first time after that shedding, I was keeping the humidity roughly where everybody keeps their Dumeril's boa. And it was, the first time she shed it was not great. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it just did not it came off in very small pieces. And afterwards I bumped the humidity a bunch on the very, very high end of what's normal for them. And now I've forgone that. I don't have that issue anymore, because heat lights are, dehydrating. It's unfortunate, but, they are. It's not exactly like the sun. The infrared that comes through the atmosphere is filtered by the water droplets in the atmosphere. So it pulls these individual wavelengths out that cause dehydration. So if you're utilizing heat lamps and you've been keeping snakes forever, I always have this humidity. My sheds are perfect. You throw a heat lamp on now, you might need to bump your humidity a bit to get them shedding like they were. Because they are dehydrating. We're working on that. I'm currently working with the people at Reptile Lighting, to try and develop a way to filter those wavelengths, those dehydrating wavelengths from incandescent lights. But it's still a little ways out, and this is just the best we have right now. So we kind of have to make adjustments to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's also dust in the atmosphere too, right? Like I think I've heard that there's like 6 inches of rock between us and like the very that's just
Sure.
like if you were to take all that dust and compress it, which is just, it's nuts. And you have to figure that's reflecting so much light.
Yeah. So the dust particles will essentially block the light. So if you were to measure, so the way we measure the sun is the total sun is in watts per meter squared. If you were to measure the sun from above our atmosphere and on Earth, it's 2 wildly different numbers. And the dust certainly blocks a ton of it. And the water vapor doesn't block it. It filters it. So it pulls all those dehydrating wavelengths out of the infrared A. Not to say the sun won't dehydrate you at all. It just is much less than an incandescent or halogen light.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at animals that are outside and they go through periods of 100% humidity, and then, it's going to go through a drying period, and there's droughts and rainy seasons. And so, it's always going to be different. I mean, you see, snakes on iNaturalist and things like that. And they're, they have stuck shed, out in nature. So it happens. It does happen out in nature. So it makes, I know I was watching some documentary and you could see like just the snake looked pretty gnarly, like, tick on it and stuck shed and, looked all mucusy at the mouth, and you're like, oh man, if you were to see that in captivity, that would be gnarly.
You would get torn up in the comment section. Yeah. No, I mean, anybody that herps can tell you not every animal you herp is looking good.
Yeah.
Some of them are super malnourished, and some of them are, stuck shed and parasites and all kinds of things. So it's, nature's brutal. So we're trying to do our best to give them ideal circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, right? Like we're trying to give them the best day outside
Right.
possible ever year round.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's, even doing that is not actually ideal all the time. So, some replication of seasons and some replication of stressors, is good for them. And, can increase their, ability to deal with situations, can increase their immune system, makes their body go through all the hormonal changes that need to go through. So it's a lot, especially snake keepers are super, familiar, or snake breeders super familiar with, having different seasons for your animal. So what the ideal situation is, and just trying to copy that one situation all year long, that itself is not ideal. So
Yeah.
it's a tough thing we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, it seems like the seasonal fasting and cooling period is probably a very beneficial thing for these animals, right? Especially for snakes. I mean, bearded dragons too, right? Like they in the wild they brumate.
Yeah, exactly. In the wild, they brumate. There is some evidence to say that that's good for them. Not a ton, but there is some. And like nighttime temperature drops, there's actually a great study that shows that nighttime temperature drops for those animals are healthy for them. But all animals experience some level of seasonal change. Even the tropical animals, they may not experience a huge temperature change or a huge length of day change, but they do experience a huge humidity change from wet season to dry season, and availability of food.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just looking at it from sort of a human perspective, like I look forward to a change in the environment, and then, even then, it's like, oh, when I'm in the middle of winter, I know it's Florida, but when I'm in the middle of, yeah,
I'm in LA,
you have it even better. When I'm in the middle of winter and it's cooler, and it's like, 45 degrees in the morning, at first that's refreshing and fun. And then, after several weeks of it, you're like, okay, I wouldn't mind a thunderstorm and, some warmer temperatures now, and then you get into that and you stay there for a while and it's all right. When are we going to get the cool season back? And
we're never happy.
We're never happy. Yeah. We're never happy. But we are, I'm sure that the animals have to, at least maybe they don't yearn for it or look forward to it. I mean, who knows? We'll never be able to answer that question, but they, they know how to regulate themselves. Right. And there's got to be like periods that are easier to regulate than others, and yeah, I don't know. It's so how do you handle cooling periods? Do you cool your Doomerals where you go through a period where you give them a lower where you would read their basking spot and it would be a lower reading?
So I don't really, and you could, and it's probably good. What I do, I turn down her nighttime. I do use a DHP to keep her nighttime temps where I want them to be. And in the winter, that number will change from the summer. And it's, that DHP is over on the cool end of the enclosure. So if for whatever reason in the winter, her cool end hit that low temp, it would turn on and raise the temperature of her cool end of her enclosure in the daytime if it needed to. So in the winter, things are just generally cooler in the enclosure, and in the summer they're generally warmer in the enclosure, just based on the ambient room. I don't tend to use a ton of air conditioning or heat in our house. Luckily, we're in a pocket where it's reasonably comfortable all year long, but it does fluctuate. The middle of the night in December is a very different temperature than the middle of the night in July. So I just let it roll with that. And that seems to work. She slows down. She eats less. She hides more. I see that from her. I see it from my tarantulas. I see it from all kinds of the animals I have. That they just kind of slow down in the wintertime just based on natural, us having cooler temperatures.
Yeah. Yeah, that has to be important, giving them that change, giving them that slow down period.
Yeah. I mean, them being poikilotherms or ectothermic, like they get their energy from heat, from the temperature, and if you gave them full power all the time, that's exhausting for them. That can wear their system out. They do need these cooler temps to slow their metabolism down and give it a little bit of a break. It could be stressful if you're constantly giving them, high temps, and it'll exhaust their system. So these, nighttime drops, even if it's a little one, more tropical animals can hang with a little bit of a nighttime drop, and then animals further out like bearded dragons can handle. I mean, you could go into the 40s and they would be fine. And I'm sure, like you saw with your outdoor diamonds, they got down really low and they tolerated it. It wasn't ideal, but they got through it. It was fine.
Yeah, that won't be happening again.
Yeah, that's a little extreme, but it did show that they were fully capable of coping.
Yeah, and just and I learned about temp guns in that situation too, because I went out and I temped the top of the outdoor enclosure, and it came up as like, it was something insane, like 18 degrees or 20 something degrees. I can't remember. But it came up as something crazy. And that's when I think Sean Perry pointed out to me that I'm actually reading the reflection that was in the frost on top of the enclosure. So it was like hitting that and reading what was actually probably up in the atmosphere. I'm assuming it's it was
something
kind of a
like that.
Experience.
It's just not accurate, essentially. So any kind of shiny surface like that is not going to give you an accurate reading at all. So you really want, like, the ideal surface to measure for a temp gun is like slightly darker and rougher. Doesn't have any sheen to it. But again, you're only measuring the surface of that object. You're not measuring anything to do with the sun, really. I mean, it's roughly can help you guesstimate, but that's not really what you're measuring.
Interesting. Yeah. That's going to be a hard one to come to terms with.
Yeah. And I mean, so temperature itself, when we measure, when meteorologists measure temperature, they use they use like a Stevenson's box is what it's called. It's a special little enclosure, and they've got the thermometer in the enclosure. No direct sunlight hits it at all. It's got the perfect amount of ventilation. That's how temperature is measured. Temperature is not meant to be measured in the sun. So if people have these thermometers that are outside and they're like, oh, well, the forecast says 90, but my thermometer says 113. Well, it's getting direct radiation. You're not actually measuring temperature. You're inaccurately measuring radiation from the sun is what you're measuring.
Wow.
Yeah. Any kind of, especially, so common error for people, they throw a temperature gauge over on the hot end of their enclosure within reach of the heat lamps. And it's like, that's not really measuring anything. That's measuring the radiation of the heat bulb and measuring it inaccurately. So I don't even use a hot end ambient digital thermometer. I don't have it on any enclosures I help people with. I'm like, you don't need that. Don't worry about it.
Now, what about thermostat probes?
Yeah, thermostat probes should be on the cool end. And
what?
The fact is, the literature from these manufacturers is incorrect. They use the technology that they didn't develop. Thermostats were developed by, meteorologists. They were always meant to measure inside of a box, shielded from the sun. That's the only way they can give you accurate measurements. So really, thermostats are fail safes. This is not just me. This is, Francis Baines and Roman Murin and Thomas Griffiths and all the people that do lighting for zoos, and not even just reptiles, for all the animals at the zoo. A thermostat should be on the cool end, and it's really meant to make sure the animal doesn't overheat, because you shouldn't be using a probe to dial in your basking spot. Because number one, that tool was never actually meant to sit under a light. Even though the manufacturer says it is, they're wrong. And number two, it's when it does that, it's going to dim your heat light. And dimming a heat light is not what we want. As soon as the heat light starts dimming, it's pushing wavelengths further into infrared B and infrared C, and you're not getting all the amazing benefits of infrared A, which is, the largest part of the infrared spectrum of the sun, and the most bioavailable and the most beneficial. So anytime you're dimming an incandescent light, you're essentially losing all those benefits. So that probe really should be on the cool end, and just there to keep the enclosure from overheating.
Wow. Now, what about radiant heat panels? Should the probe be underneath that?
Yeah, it's not as bad as under the radiant heat panel, not a huge deal. It's not like an incandescent light. I would put the probe where the animal is going to be hanging out. Typically the radiant heat panels cover a large amount of area. So that is more or less what your animal is going to experience. And it's, it's not a perfect situation, but that's a fine situation that the probe is turning off and on based on the radiant heat panel's output. That's essentially what I do with the tropical animals that I do provide heat to at nighttime. The probe it's within reaching distance of the radiant heat. It's not directly under it, but it's, roughly in the area.
But it's also, okay, so if you're using thermostats with heat lamps, you would want to say you'd want to put your probe on the cool side and say okay, if the temperature gets to 100 degrees on the cool side or something like that, it's essentially a fail safe that something has gone wrong.
Yes.
And it's way too damn hot in here now.
Yeah.
And we just need this light to turn off.
Yeah. It's essentially that situation where you're gone and there's a heat wave and your air conditioning went out. Something like that. Under all normal circumstances, your setup should be set it and forget it. Essentially, obviously don't actually do that, but that's an ideal, situation. So your thermostat is being your monitor in your absence.
Okay. So speaking of, set it and forget it, let's get into how you set up an enclosure. So let's say it's just, sort of I don't even know, I guess you could tell me, how would you set up a reptile enclosure? Let's say it's one of your standard 4x2x2 enclosures, right? And regardless of the animal that's in there, what tools would you implement to set up that animal? And then essentially the only things that are going to deviate is going to be wattage, right? It's going to be sort of, just whether it's more or less powerful.
Yeah. So I set up enclosure. I set up the lights first. I'll make some decisions based on the species. I'll make some decisions on which lamps to use, because I kind of have a rough idea. Okay, this light, I can get this UVA from this distance, and these heat lights are roughly this distance to get that power density that I'm after. I'll set up all the lighting in an empty enclosure first, and then based on that, design the enclosure, elevate the basking surface, lower the basking surface, and essentially have the entire light setup done first. I'll measure the power density. I'll measure the UVI and I'll measure the lux. It may be that like, okay, my lights are, because every situation is different. Some people can't have lights on the top of their enclosure. So now I got to make do with how do I do this inside the enclosure? Let's say I've got, the UVI is great, but the power density is a bit too much. So now I've got the heat lamp inside the enclosure. I may pull the heat lamp further away and angle it to hit so the beams of light still overlap, and angle it. And then at that point, I should get a decent power density so that everything remains proportional. Or I may need to, if I have the LED on the top and it's just way too bright, I may need to elevate the LED a little bit. You can, distance is equal to dimming without the loss of benefits. So for heat lamps, just creating more distance is going to get you to where you want to be, and is a lot better than dimming the lamp to get there. That's why like the heat lamps I sell, or the fixtures I sell for heat lamps, are all adjustable in distance, because I don't want people dimming their heat lights. Okay.
So you can get it further away from the animal or the basking platform, and that lowers the intensity.
That's right. Yeah. Because that's the ideal way to deal with a heat lamp. And with UV, those luminized fixtures can dim. That's great. But most people's UV lamps can't dim. So you're really, distance is the name of the game to hit your UV numbers as well. Or even, putting it on top of screen. I know, some people, Aaron at Reptile Lighting has like, the UV was too intense even on top of the screen. So he added another screen and it filtered it even more. And he hit the numbers that he needed to hit.
Oh, wow.
So filtering, using the screen to filter is a tool you can use. And so distance and filtering is really that's the name of the game.
Interesting. Okay. So what's the next stage in setting up that enclosure? How do you specifically dial in humidity? As we talked about, the lighting can sort of act as like a desiccator. It really sucks the humidity out. So how do you go about keeping your humidity on point so that way you get good sheds and no respiratory issues?
Right. So substrate is, I think, one of the best humidity stabilizers. So I think that's a great, obviously, you don't have to have substrate. People that harp on that, especially for a snake, something that digs, sure, substrate, it's really part of their well-being. But for snakes, they're not digging. So if there's just no way for you to, safely build the enclosure with substrate, then, you don't have to have it. But there is an advantage to it. It does stabilize humidity really well. I'm a nerd, so I've developed a misting system on my few tropical animals that utilize absolute humidity instead of relative humidity. It's a product I'll probably fully develop and sell at some point, but right now it's just kind of cobbled together on my couple tropical animals. And essentially it has a probe that will measure absolute humidity, and based on the absolute humidity number will mist or forego misting based on what that number is. And absolute humidity is, I really think the hobby needs to start embracing it, because relative humidity is just so wild. People will tell you, oh, well, what's the humidity on your snake? Oh, it's 70%. Yeah, but 70% at what temperature? 70% at 70 degrees is wildly different humidity than 70% at 90 degrees. Those are two completely different humidities. But absolute humidity just takes that temperature out of the equation. It's the actual amount of water in the air. So it's like grams per cubic meter, and it's like how much water is in that air. The temperature is just taken completely out of the equation. So it's going to take a while to kind of start developing standards. I did kind of put a little Excel together after looking through a bunch of um, care sheets for different, and then tried to roughly figure out what would be good absolute humidities for these different species. But I think it's going to take some playing around and people actually playing with absolute humidity and seeing where their animal enjoys it to see what kind of numbers we should recommend for different species. But I think it is far superior to relative humidity, just way less variable.
Yeah, I mean, just measuring humidity is kind of a difficult one because, like, I have my humidifier that has a reading, and it's different than like my little Govee probes that I have kind of all throughout the room. Those are getting radically different numbers, you know, and yeah, it's really difficult to get a handle on that. I mean, I'm generally going off of how is the shed, you know, did they have a good shed or did they not, you know?
Yeah. And there's just kind of a feel when you open the enclosure, you can just, how it just feels dry, like, or, know, or it feels too dank. It's like, you can get a feel after you've been doing it a while just by looking at it. So, you know, like on all my tarantulas, I don't have misting systems for them. So it's really just looking at their enclosure and being like, yeah, things look dry. I need to spray.
So when, like, how do when you're developing these products, you know, the lights that you have, what testing is done for new lamps and how are they deemed safe? And, you know, like when you were sending them out to Tom, are you looking at, is he looking at them and is he giving you feedback like, hey, this one's actually unsafe? Or is he saying like, this one's safe, but it's not hitting what we want to see? You know, like what does that look like? Like what is, how are you getting that feedback? And then how are you adjusting and moving forward?
So, yeah, sure. So for LEDs, the goal is to have a sun-like spectrum. And if we have a sun-like spectrum, it's safe. So it's being safe is just kind of a byproduct of trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve. You know, UVA1 in itself is not really dangerous. Anyways, it doesn't react with the dermis the same way UVA2 and UVB does. So that's not really a big concern. But having super bright UVA diodes, if it was not balanced and in sun spectrum and you just had tons of bright UVA diodes, then, you know, if the animal stares at it, that could be unsafe for their eyes. You know, staring at any LED is not great for your eyes, but a UV LED is a little bit worse.
Okay. And so how were you doing any tests here and or were you just sending everything out and he was testing it and getting you feedback?
Yeah. So I have a UVA meter. So I was able to roughly measure the amount of UVA coming out versus the amount of lux of essentially the balance between the white diodes and the UVA diodes. So that was able to get me roughly in the neighborhood. Then when it would go to Thomas, I have a spectrometer, but it only goes down to like 390. So I wasn't able to see the UVA spectrum. So then if I got it dialed roughly proportional in terms of UVA versus what we call PAR, 700 to 800, that was balanced. Then it would go to Thomas and he would see the actual spectrum. So it may need more. It's okay. The 365 is too much and the 395 is not enough, or vice versa. And then I would kind of dial from there. But obviously what ultimately happened is that back and forth didn't really work. So what I had to do is put dimmers on each individual diode so he could dial that in.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a real, I was like, oh, I could put one of these together in like 6 months. And then 2 years later, I was still working on it. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. It just, I mean, trying to replicate the sun it's not easy.
Yeah. And can that light, you have one sitting right behind you there.
Yeah.
Can that be, can there be too much of it? Like if you had like a large enclosure, should you be putting it on one side so that way the animal can retreat from the light if they want to seek out a darker area?
Yeah. So we typically use lux to deal with to measure the amount of visual light. Lux meters don't actually measure UVA, so you have to trust the manufacturer, like myself or Faunalux, or trust the third-party reports is really what you need to do. But you would still use a lux meter to measure it, and animals should have a certain lux in their hot spot, essentially in their sunspot, we should call it. Basking area is not even my favorite. It's just their spot of sun. Mm. And different species should have a different lux in their spot of sun. And you can have light over the cool end of the enclosure, but it should be nowhere near the amount that you have for the spot of sun.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is that like the problem that it seems like is like it seems like people need a lot of different meters, right? Like, yeah. I mean, how many meters do we need?
Right. So you could get away. So companies should be making irradiance charts with their products. I made an irradiance chart for mine. The Reptile Lighting Group makes irradiance charts for their for different lights. You can go look up irradiance charts for there. You could get away with no meters if you purchased lights that had published irradiance charts. You could get away with not using any meters. There's tons of irradiance charts for UV. There's more and more irradiance charts for heat lamps, and for the little heat bulbs I sell for tarantulas, those come with irradiance charts. Arcadia is starting to now publish irradiance charts for their heat lamps. So if you use irradiance charts, you could get away with no meters. If you don't want to use irradiance charts, you're going to need 3 meters. You're going to need a power density meter, a lux meter, and a solar meter. The lux meters, luckily, you can get them for like $20, and they're reasonably accurate for lights. I wouldn't trust them outside with the sun, but with lights, they're reasonably accurate, and they're really cheap.
And so these charts, essentially, it's just going to say like, hey, if you're at 12 inches with this light, you're going to read this. If you're at 18, you're going to read this. If you're at 24, so on and so forth. Yeah.
And you just line up your numbers with the guidance, the little table at Reptile Lighting, and hit those numbers you need to hit. And then again, that's a guide. So if your animal is basking all day long, well, you got to up the infrared. If it's not basking at all or basking just on the periphery, then it's too much. So you got to adjust. For the animal is really the dictator of what's good for them and what's not good for them. But the Reptile Lighting chart, it's the best starting point and for most animals, just using that will get you right in the Goldilocks zone. But you may have to play with it depending on your animal.
And what should, like, how often should people get their animals outside into actual sunlight?
I mean, so that's actual sunlight is excellent and the best by light years. I mean, we are so far from replicating the actual sun. I keep a tortoise outside. If I could keep more animals outside, I would. I just don't have the space. And some animals, the tropical ones, they wouldn't do well outside here, anyways. But actual sun is just we're not nearly there yet. But you do have to weigh out how stressful is that experience for the animal. If they enjoy going outside in the sun, get them out as much as you want to get them out. Offer a place to get away from the sun, obviously, but get them out as much as you want to get them out. But if it's a super stressful experience for them, then, it is what it is. They're not going to, I would hate for you to just force your animal to take it outside. It needs the sun, but it's freaking
Yeah.
out the whole time. That's not good for anybody.
Yeah. Sometimes we can be a little bit selfish with what we think is best for the animal.
Right.
And it might actually be stressful, and maybe not a good stressor either. It might
Right.
just be
Yeah.
really
Traumatic.
a negative experience.
Yeah, exactly. And we're trying to build trust with these animals. So obviously there's situations where if they have to go to the vet, they have to go to the vet. But I try to avoid any stressful interactions that I can with the animal.
What do you think about people that do annual vet visits just cause?
I mean, I don't do it just because. I can tell if my animal's acting funny or if the poop looks funny. If you're a super novice keeper and you don't feel confident in your ability to tell whether or not your animal's sick, then go for it. But I don't think it's super necessary for every animal. Some animals are sickly and kind of need that checkup. But if you know your animals pretty well and can tell if something's off, this every year seems a bit excessive.
I mean, I've seen people do that, and I'm sure that it's like, maybe it's good practice, but I don't know. There's quite a few, just thinking about it. I'm like, okay, stress, right, is a huge thing.
Yeah.
The other thing, like monetarily, it's
Right.
for you, that could be extraordinarily expensive. If you have any amount of animals. So sometimes I'm like, I don't know if that's a standard that should be set, or if people should feel like they're not doing a good job if they're not doing that. But the biggest thing for me is biohazard, because you're taking your animal into a place
the sickly animals
where everybody brings their sick animals,
Yeah.
and like just imagine if you're like, oh yeah, I have this really great exotic vet, and I'm going to take my exotic animal to where everybody takes their sick exotic animals.
Yeah.
So that the minute, like you, let's say you bring in a snake for an annual wellness check, and the last animal that was in that room was nido positive and had discharge pouring out of its mouth.
Yeah.
And they're doing swabs and touching drawer handles and doorknobs and all that. And now your animal, who's perfectly fine and has no symptoms at all, is in that room like, hey guys, we're just hanging out doing a little wellness check here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would hope the actual room where everything happens would be sanitized pretty well, but certainly the waiting room, I mean, those don't get sanitized after every animal that comes in.
No.
And that's a great point. I mean, so medical is not my forte. It's not what I've been blessed to have mostly healthy animals. I do know a bit about bearded dragon parasites. I had to deal with those and did my own fecals and things like that to deal with that. But medical in general for animals is not my forte. But that does see. I got a flu from going to the ER it was an urgent care. I had diverticulitis. So I went with diverticulitis and I left the hospital with the flu 2 days later.
No.
So and I knew it too. This woman sat down right next to me, is just hacking all over the place. And I'm like, mother, like I know I'm going to get sick. Yeah.
And diverticulitis is going to compromise your immune system to begin
Even
with,
more,
right?
Yeah,
that's going to lower your white cell count. That's terrible.
Yeah, so I can totally, what you're saying, that seems reasonable to me for sure.
I don't know. I mean, the only times I've ever taken snakes to the vet was when they had a respiratory infection.
Sure. Yeah.
And I remember taking an animal in, and at the time it was like, oh yeah, we're putting her, because she's periscoping and everything, we're putting her in a heated chamber with oxygen, so she doesn't have to work so hard to breathe. And I'm like, that's super cool. And now I
Yeah.
think about it and I'm like, how many other sick snakes went in there?
Yeah.
Is
Right.
it properly sanitized? And what is really sanitized, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, the waiting room, that's not sanitary. There's no
Yeah.
there's no sanitation out there. Maybe at the end of the day or something, or when the
Right.
janitor comes through and does a deep clean. But even the room, like, did they take their gloves off before they touched the door handle, or did they continue wearing their gloves to go get the swab? You know,
Right.
and like after they did the swab and grabbed the sample, what did they touch? You know, like not everybody's sterile process is equal, you know? So that
Yeah.
terrifies me, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're dealing with humans. So even if it is something, even if perfect cross contamination hygiene is the rule of the vet clinic, people are people. And some people have bad days and, some people are going through things and they don't do it. They don't follow the exact procedure. So yeah, I'm a bit weird with germs anyways. So now you've created a whole new fear for me. Thanks.
Oh, dude, I'm so bad. I'm really bad, and I've gotten worse over time. And I think having kids and
Right.
and their illnesses that they've gone through, and I've experienced, like the whatever it is, the hoof and mouth disease. I mean,
yeah.
dude, their nails came off. They had
jeez.
lesions that just made my skin crawl. And I'm like sitting there like, can I get this? And I'm like Googling it. And it's like, no, you should be fine because you're old. You've probably already dealt with it. And I'm like, I don't want to see it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, like I see that kind of stuff. And yeah, it kind of awoken my my OCD and yeah, just I make mistakes with my own collection, man. Like I'll be grabbing water bowls and then like be like, oh, this one has a poop. Let me put on some gloves, scoop the poop, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, I'm still wearing my gloves. Like
absolutely.
I'll own that, and
Yeah.
and I've had a lot of my animals tested. The thing that I take really seriously is quarantine, though. That's big. Because with your collection, you can make little mistakes like that and you're probably going to be okay because it's okay. I've had these animals for 4 or 5 years. Right. And they've been in the same area and they probably have a microbiome that is sharing a similar load, whereas a new animal that's in quarantine, it's like you are separate, you are last. So that way I don't make that mistake because, man,
huge question mark. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
it's a big deal. Biosecurity is a big deal. And something I'm not so good at is quarantine of plants that go into my bioactives. I've been so lucky to not have any issues, but I'm trying to be better about that because there's some horror stories of people, they've got a big, 8-foot long bioactive and suddenly every single plant in their bioactive is infected and they got to tear the entire thing apart. So quarantine on animals, I feel like is pretty easy and people do it usually pretty well, but quarantine on plants is pretty important too. And I don't do it as often as I should. I'm getting better.
Dude, I didn't even think about quarantine of plants.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a thing.
What are you quarantining for? Like pests, like
pests.
Physical?
Yeah. Pests.
Wow.
Yeah. Pests can be a nightmare. Yeah.
So like soil mites or aphids?
Soil mites aren't even that bad. So aphids is one, thrips is another one. Just bacterial infections on the plants.
Oh my God.
There's all kinds of things that can just destroy your bioactive. And some people, the plants in their bioactive are just as important to them as the animal. They've got these, super rare, $1,000 plant that's inside their bioactive. And that's not my situation, but that is for a lot of people. So quarantine's to be taken seriously with the plants.
Man. And how do you quarantine a plant? Is it time, just like with anything else, or do you treat it with something?
So time, usually about 30 days or so is the life cycle of a lot of things. So 30 to 60 days. And then a lot of people will, when they're taking it from the pot and putting it into the bioactive, washing all the soil off the roots and then even dipping it into like a tiny, the green portion, dipping it into like a small bleach solution. I want to say it's like 10-to-1 bleach, something like that. There's an exact number, but I think the guy from Atlantic Botanical Gardens was on Animals at Home, and I wrote down his kind of protocol, and it's roughly something like that. So yeah, it's not quite as long as reptiles, but it's 30 days. It's a while. When you really want to get that bare spot in your enclosure, is like, that's bugging me. I got to get something in there.
Yeah. That's boy, I didn't even think about that. We're unlocking each other's fears.
Right? Yeah. This is healthy for us.
I mean, and man, really the more I think about the vet, the more that freaks me out, man, because that is, you could totally walk into a room right after somebody was in there with a nido-positive animal.
Yeah.
And like, or anything. Crypto isn't crypto airborne? I mean, I
think so.
Yeah. The, what do they call them? Oh man, the PhDs are cursing right now.
Right.
Oh man, what is it? I can't remember what it's called. But the spores, there's spores from
Cryptosporidium.
Crypto. Yeah. They put the spore in sporidium.
Yeah. And then there's the one from amphibians that's airborne as well, and ravaging the natural world and made its way into the captive world as well, and it's airborne as well. So that stuff's in the air, which is just that's scary.
Yeah, and you got to figure like pet keepers, no shade on pet keeper. Like, I mean, like novice pet keepers, I suppose I should say. And I don't mean that as a pejorative, but you got to figure like they're like, why has my snake got a runny nose? And like, they don't realize how serious it could be that if they were to take their one sick ball python into somebody, and if that illness were to go into somebody's huge collection, it could wipe the entire thing out.
Right. Yeah. Someone that took their collection in for something minor, or and now they brought home something major. Oh, so it's almost like if you go to the vet, you got to re-go through the whole quarantine process again.
Dude, that's actually a solid idea. Yeah, like if you take your animal to the vet, you should probably put it in a separate quarantine setup.
I'd love to get an expert's opinion on that, though. I wonder if we're overestimating the possibilities here. But
I don't think we are.
In my head, it seems plenty reasonable.
I'm going to hit up Dr. Tillis as soon as we're done recording, and I'm going to ask him.
Yeah, let me know. I'm very curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, it seems logical, which is why, honestly, I haven't seen a vet in a very long time. I've been fortunate enough to be able to collect my own samples and send them out for testing, and, be able to get the results that way, and then figure out a treatment after that, and luckily I haven't had to figure out any treatments. The only vet things I'll do is if on lizards, I'll do my own fecal. And if I see something that looks weird, I'll take the fecal to the vet, but I'm not taking the lizard to the vet. Walk me through doing a fecal. Walk me through that.
Yeah, so I just do the float method, which is the easiest and least precise, but most vets' office use it too. You essentially collect it, you put it in these little containers that's got solution in it, you mix it up really, really well, you let it sit for a while. The fecal matter is supposed to drop to the bottom and the parasites come to the top. You drop a little slide on top of it, and the parasites should stick to the slide, and you drop that under your microscope. It's not foolproof. You can get false negatives. And you shouldn't get a false positive, but you will get false negatives. But it's a good line of defense. I had rescued a bearded dragon some years back, and it was like riddled with parasites. It had roundworm, coccidia, pinworm, and something else. So that was it was an ongoing battle trying to get this thing healthy. And the fecals were, it's like $60 a piece at the vet I was going to. I was like, okay, I got to learn how to do this. So I started doing it myself and checking up on them. And at some point I would just take the fecal. If I saw something that looked weird or like, okay, there's something here, then I'll take the fecal into the vet.
And how did you treat this mess of a bearded dragon?
Medicines. The vet gave us medicine, and it just
Okay.
went on. I mean, it was a good 6 months of treating it with various medicines till it
Jeez.
finally cleared up. And once it was all cleared up and fine, I adopted it out to somebody.
Man. So you
Yeah.
got the fun part.
I got the fun part. Yeah, it was a learning experience. I learned a lot.
Does it break your brain thinking of how many bearded dragons are out there probably getting absolutely terrible care?
Yeah, I mean,
Dude, there's so many of them out there.
Bearded dragons and ball pythons. It's the two most uncared for species on the planet, or improperly cared for species on the planet. I group expert for a lot of Facebook groups, and so I'll have chats with the admins, and they'll send pictures of some of these bearded dragons. Like somebody will join the group asking for help, or what they'll usually do when they're really embarrassed, they private message the admins and send pictures. So it's not stuff you see in the groups, and they'll send the picture over and I'll be like, geez, this is just, horrifying. Or it's somebody who has rescued a bearded dragon from a situation and needs help, or ball pythons. It's always bearded dragons and ball pythons, because people can get those animals so readily. And it's somebody who's never, most people that have never had a reptile before, it's one or the other usually, or a leopard gecko maybe. And it's always them, and it's always just horrific conditions. And I don't know what to do other than, podcasts like yours and Animals at Home and other reptile podcasts that talk about husbandry and just trying to push the proper information out there and hope it gets to as many people as possible. I don't know what else you can do about that. It's just a terrible part of the hobby. I don't see it moving a whole lot. As the hobby grows, and it is growing, it's going to be a part of it, and all we can do is do our best to try and get the right information out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like thinking about all the people that have like undiagnosed mental health issues and, all these other things that are, like ruining their lives. And it like breaks your heart to think about it. And it's almost like you have to disconnect from it, because you can't make everybody do the right thing. You can't you can't fix the world, not by yourself, and you'll drive yourself insane if you do it. If you try to take that on. And I mean, God bless for, going into the groups and everything and trying to help people. That must be, I can't deal with it. Like a lot of the groups, I'll go into them and they'll be like, what's wrong with my leopard gecko? And it looks like a Mediterranean gecko or something. Like it's just so malnourished, and you're like, I can't even look at this,
No, it's too, and that's why I did used to admin one group, and eventually it was so taxing. I was like, I just can't do this. The fatigue was too much. So now I just consult for some different groups, and they'll have and generally I just answer lighting questions, which is great. I love talking about lights. I hate seeing pictures of sick animals. So they usually they don't, I'm not burdened with that so often. But the occasional time they do, I'm like, oh, dude, I can't even. Honestly, I turn, like, I exit the chat and just like, I can't see that. It'll ruin my entire day. Like,
I know. Or just consume your entire day trying to make it right. And like, God forbid you make contact. Like, I hate saying this, but God forbid you make contact with one of these people, and then they have 90 questions for you and there's no short answers.
Right. Yeah. And they will just tell me what to do. And it's like, what's your budget? Where do you live? Like where do we even start when it's, when it's a certain level of bad? It's like, I don't even know where to start, dude. Like, this is just beyond my ability to, put it all together cohesively and give you a good plan forward. It's incomprehensible sometimes.
Yeah. All right, man. You ready to get into some of these Patreon questions? We definitely didn't get to them first.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Yeah,
I said
you're following the herd and doing it at the end.
It's just my squirrel brain, man. Like I had an idea and then that went out the window.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get right into Phil's question on tarantulas. He said, "What tarantulas do you keep?" He's got follow-up questions, so we'll just start with that one.
So mostly New World arboreals they're my favorite. So I've got several different species of Avicularia, Carabina versicolor, Buropora diversipes, Salmopius, different species of Salmopius, the Brazilian jewel. So a lot of New World arboreals. That's kind of they're my favorite. I do have some Poecilotheria, so Old World arboreals. We've got an OBT, the Tarantulas marinus. So that's an Old World terrestrial. I've got a salmon pink bird eater, so a New World terrestrial. We've got kind of all over the spectrum here. And then I keep huntsmans, and my wife really loves jumpers, so she's got jumpers. Black widows.
Why keep huntsmans, man? They give me the heebie-jeebies, dude.
I love huntsmans. They're my favorite. After you keep huntsmans, like people talk about their old worlds being, teleporting and things like. No. Keep a huntsman and you will see teleporting. Like
dog, I'm in Florida. I see teleporting in my garage.
Yeah, they're awesome. I lived with a huntsman for a while because I had a lanula, Heteropoda lanula, purple huntsman, beautiful huntsman. And I just reached in to adjust something and it was up my arm, my shoulder, jumped. I turned around, fucking gone, man. Like 100% gone. And my apartment is not cluttery at all. Like we keep it, my wife's, super into keeping things on point. And it just disappeared, like flat out disappeared. I didn't see it for like 3 months. I don't know how they just teleport. It is wild how fast they are, but they're so cool to watch. Like watching them at night creep around and watching them eat, and they're just,
that must be cool. Yeah. Cause I would assume that they do it more slowly and more, with more intention behind their movement. Whereas when you run into them in the wild, they're just like, what? They're just like all over.
Out. Yeah, I know. I think I've only been able to catch one huntsman. And I've tried to catch so many in Florida and in Costa Rica. I try to catch so many, and I managed to get my hands on one because
they bite?
They will bite, but they're super. I've never been bitten by a huntsman, and I've grabbed at the ones I have.
No, I can't.
They're super hesitant.
God, I really want to fix that broken part of my brain that is absolutely paralyzed with fear by huntsman spiders. They're just so fast, and sometimes I'll see them on like my driveway or something.
Yeah,
and my dog will go by, and my dog totally doesn't even register that they're there.
Yeah.
And then they run at me and I'm like, bro, no, what are you doing? Like
just own one. And I think you'll develop, I think that's how it is with these things. If you own one, you develop a completely different appreciation for them. And you just get comfortable. Exposure's everything. Like when I met my wife, she hated spiders. And now I have to beg her to stop bringing home spiders. Like that's
hilarious.
It's like become her thing more than it's my thing. Like, she's just all about it. So we have a bug fair coming up this weekend, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be painful. But yeah, own one. It'll change.
Yeah. I mean, the Australian ones are enormous.
Yeah.
Are those in the pet trade? Probably not, right?
Yeah. There's a few species that are in the pet trade. They get pretty big. Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yeah, they'll start with a small one, and then work your way up. You'll follow. It's something. They are creepy, and that's why they're so cool. That's kind of why I'm into them and why they're cool looking, because they creep around so weird looking. Yeah, and they're crazy fast.
And I think what traumatized me was, and I hate talking about this, was I went to attempt murder on one when I was like a young teen. I was still living at my parents' house, and they were like, there was one out on the front porch, like up on the ceiling, and my dad's like, here, take the poison and go spray it, right? And I go out there and like I didn't even like pull a shot off. I put the thing up. And it just like went full Spider-Man, just like opened its arms and just right at my face was just like, yeah. I gotta bail, and I'm just,
I'm out.
And I remember just hearing it hit the ground and then just hearing it run away, and I'm just, after that I was like, yep, I am damaged goods now,
Yeah, exposure therapy. That's the only thing that'll do it.
That I did get, I forgot how many I got. I got a bunch of slings, and it was red rumps and curly hairs, I think. And that did really help me with my arachnophobia, because it's like, you get them and they're like a quarter the size of your pinky nail. And you're like, well, I can't be scared of this. And as they grow, you kind of, some of them are more flighty and defensive, and others are more laid back, and you just kind of get to know their personalities. But yeah. So you have a Lasiodora parahybana as well.
I do. Yeah. It's not super big yet. That was one of my more recent. It's probably about that big now.
Yeah.
But it was kind of the only terrestrial that I really wanted to have. I just like them for some of their big of the bird eaters. They seem to be the most docile. So just wanted a big spider. I mean, that's a perfect big spider.
Yeah, that's I have one of those, and Phil wants to send me so many bugs, and I'm like,
he's like a drug pusher with those things. It's hilarious.
He's out of control.
Yeah, it's funny, but he's passionate about it, which is awesome.
He is. I actually go out of my way to text him and thank him for his input on the Discord in the invertebrates section, because
he's great.
The knowledge he brings in there, and just the how interactive he is, and it's something I can't really interact on because I just don't have the knowledge.
Yeah, and his wide knowledge. I mean, new worlds, old worlds, centipedes. Like he's got that wide experience with all kinds of different species, which is awesome.
He's psychotic. He's lost his mind. He always has new spiders coming in and new centipedes, and I'm like, golly, man. Yeah, I don't even think he likes reptiles anymore.
Right? Yeah.
So let's see, what was his follow-up question. Okay, so how do tarantulas benefit from having heat? And what behaviors have you observed by giving them basking spots?
Yeah, so heat in the form of light from incandescent lights puts out infrared. Infrared has been studied and increases ATP, this process called cellular respiration or oxidative phosphorylation, where the mitochondria, during this electron transport chain process, where it's turning things into ATP, infrared A comes in at a certain portion of that electron transport chain and stimulates cytochrome C, something like that, and increases pretty significantly the amount of ATP coming out. So this applies to everything in Animalia. It's been studied in humans and rodents and even in fruit flies. It's the same metabolic process for all living things. In the fruit fly study, the fruit flies that were exposed to it increased their lifespan by nearly 100%. So it's pretty serious. This is called photobiomodulation when you're talking about it with all the animals in it. Photobiomodulation has all kinds of benefits. More ATP is just so good for you in terms of your immune system and aging and ability to, mobility and all of that. It's so good for you to have more ATP. So infrared A is really a big deal for all life on Earth. So I would say that's the big benefit, biologically, to providing a heat lamp. Um, when you provide heat in the form of light, it's something that they can see, and they know that, like, they don't have to guess, oh, it's hot over there. They see light, they will associate light with heat. So it's pretty apparent. I've sold a ton of these little heat lights here that have little tiny bulbs.
That is so cute. I have one.
Yeah, you got one. Yeah. So they have these little tiny bulbs, and basically everyone who I've sold them to is like, they responded pretty immediately. They come out and bask. So what kind of put me down this road is I had heard a podcast with Ryan from Martial Arachnids, him talking about using lights on his tarantulas. And I had been keeping tarantulas for a long time at that point, and even been really into lighting at that point. And I'm like, well, why am I not putting light on tarantulas? This is ridiculous. And then coincidentally took a trip out to Joshua Tree, and shortly after that, and we had a little Aphonopelma iodeus in the front yard of the Airbnb we were staying at. And I was able to watch it like poke out every morning, warm itself up, and then about mid-morning go back in. And then in the evening come out, warm itself, not when it was dark, but when the just starting to become evening, late afternoon, come out, warm itself up again, and go back down. I was like, that is straight up basking behavior.
Wow.
So it really reinforced me developing this light. And I worked with Martial Arachnids on it, was sending them prototypes to try out, and finally landed on a final version of it. And actually I've got a bunch of trail cams, and Nate from Micro Wilderness has got a friend with a bunch of property in San Diego who's got a bunch of Aphonopelma steindickneri burrows all over. And the plan is to plant these trail cams at these burrows and start recording when they come out and bask, and when they go back. And based on that, I can gather UV data, temperature data, power density data, and kind of put some type of paper together to essentially prove that these animals do use the sun, and they interact with the sun, and they almost essentially bask. So wow. I see it in my tarantulas. And it's funny, it's seasonal too. A lot of them do it much less in the winter and much more in the summer. So I just recently started seeing them all do it a lot more. And yeah, you'll see basking behaviors from them. If you set it up right, you'll see them do it. And it's a great thermal gradient. Like a tiny little infrared is very directional. So I can have a hotspot of like 100, even though it's not typically how I measure hotspots. It gets people in the neighborhood, but I can have a hotspot of about 100 where the light is, and down at the bottom of the enclosure, it can be in the high 60s. So they have enormous range that they can take advantage of. They can get away from it very easily if they choose to.
And are you setting these lights up on like screen top enclosures, or like what does that look like?
Yeah, screen top enclosures, but acrylic enclosures too. So acrylic has a thermal stability up to 140 Fahrenheit. So what I'll usually do is put some black electrical tape on the acrylic top enclosure and set the light where I plan to have it. And I don't let it get above 130 Fahrenheit because meters have like a 10% accuracy issue. So as long as it's not getting above 130 Fahrenheit on that electrical tape, it's not going to mess with the enclosure, the acrylic of the enclosure. So then I'll pull the electrical tape off, and that'll set it up. But again, it's got to be appropriately sized. If putting one heat light on a tiny acrylic enclosure is making the whole enclosure 90 degrees, then this is not going to work. Your enclosure is too small. So, it's not something, I haven't worked out how to do it for the very small acrylic enclosures, but the big adult acrylic enclosures works great.
Interesting. And so, yeah, because I mean, I know that Phil was very curious about that because he, like he jokingly said, he kind of keeps in the jars of dirt,
Right.
So it's, do you think that the hobby is going to be shifting in that direction where people will be perhaps providing more basking spots for their tarantulas?
Eventually, it's going to be a slow process. Marshall Arachnids was kind of the first to start pushing this. And then I got on board with them and brought more lighting science from my end, so that they kind of were these were the behaviors they were seeing, and they didn't quite have all the science behind it. And I was able to kind of like, okay, this is the whole science behind it, and here's better ways to measure it, and here's better light sources and things like that. And it's there's movement. We get, I've sold, I don't know, 150 of these lights, 200 of these lights or so.
Wow.
And it's a passion project for me. So I literally make like $1 on each of these lights, but it's something I really believe in strongly. So it's it's a passion project. I just sell them because I think they're really beneficial.
Wow.
So it's leaning that way, but it's going to be slow, and it's going to be a long, slow process. But I think eventually it'll be something that's pretty common.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see here. What is the next question? Okay, so Yuki asked, what does IRA do to the mitochondria? That's I believe right. I think he said infrared A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of what I just talked about a minute ago. It's a part of the cellular respiration process. So the mitochondria go through this electron transport chain. Infrared interferes in the middle of that transport chain. Cytochrome C is where it happens. It increases the cytochrome C, and then that in turn increases the ATP produced by the mitochondria. Which again, you can't underestimate the importance of ATP. It's huge for all life on Earth.
Is that adenosine triphosphate? Am I remembering that correctly?
I don't
ATP?
know. So I have that little process. Adenosine. That's okay. the full name of it. That's right.
Cool. So recently on a podcast, I heard that, and I wonder if you heard anything about this. I hope you have. Is that like everybody kind of switched from the incandescent bulbs in their houses to LED bulbs, and now they're finding that there's actual benefit to using incandescent bulbs because it does something to your mitochondria? Is that kind of what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, it's a similar. I mean, we're animals just like reptiles are animals. We're not as dependent on the sun as they are, but we're animals just like they are. And people with office jobs or people that work at home that get no sun at all whatsoever. I mean, you're going to get you're not reaping the benefits of the sun that normal people that are outside more reap. So I know there's vitamin deficiencies that people get from not being outside enough. So there's certainly advantages of having incandescent lights. For myself, I've not worried about it because I work outside quite a bit. On the weekends, I'm outside quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, being under LED light and only LED light, that's, it's not really how our bodies were designed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of weird. We were having a conversation at work because one of the guys I work with got diagnosed with skin cancer, and multiple people that I work with have been and have had it removed. And, one of the guys I work with was like, wait a minute, I thought the sun was good for you. And it's like in moderation, it's like you get your 15 to 30 minutes of sunlight, you're probably good to go, especially living where we are in Florida. It's intense, and especially it's day in and day out. Like you have to cover up and wear sunscreen or you're going to eventually get skin cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the difference between medicine and poison is the dose. So it works equally with the sun. I'm in, construction, and I'm outside a lot, and all the older white dudes in construction, they've all got things pulled off their face, like all of them.
Yep.
That's just the way it goes. I really do my best to be pretty adamant about sunscreen. My wife and kid think I'm super annoying about it because we're only going to be like 15 minutes. No. We got to do it.
Man, I'm so glad I'm not alone, dude. I am the I am such a pain in the ass with
Yeah.
the hats. Like
Yep.
like everybody in the family has a full brim hat.
Yeah.
Everybody's got long sleeve sun shirts. Everybody, the kids wear a moisturizer that's SPF 30 in the morning
Yeah.
and before they go out to school and it's weird because you hear all this like, sunscreen causes skin cancer. And it's like, what sunscreen are you using, bro?
Yeah.
Like, are you using the one that has cigarettes in it? Like just
Yeah.
be smart and get a decent brand sunscreen and one that is not carcinogenic, which I'm pretty sure they test them for carcinogens now. They test the ingredients.
They're getting better.
Yeah, I know. And there's certain ones that are potentially endocrine disruptors, and we're aware of that. Like, stay away from those ones. Like, it's not that hard to figure this out.
It's 20 minutes of research. Yeah, if you're really worried about it.
Dog, get on Google. Talk to AI. It's less than 20 minutes.
They'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah, and also cover up. Like, that's the alternative.
Cover up. Yeah, that's not carcinogenic at all. So,
yeah,
put a hat on.
Most of the sun protective clothing you're wearing is made of microplastics, and like there is an argument. There's an argument to be made for that, right? Like some of these, a lot of we're all like most of us are wearing plastic now most of the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's some scientist was talking about how, different periods of history are known for different things. And, we went through the Industrial Revolution and everything's covered in carbon and everything. And that in the future, this period we're in now is going to basically be known as like the plastic period. Everything is coated in plastic.
Isn't it wild? Like they were using asbestos for everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like now we're like, boy, they sure were dumb. And yet here we are. We're like, let me put my plastic shorts on and my plastic socks and my plastic underwear and all my plastic clothing. And we're going to pretend that this is going to have no ill effect 50 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we get to plead some ignorance. The studies aren't done yet. We don't know for 100% certain, but just because you don't know doesn't mean it's not bad. There was a time when we thought smoking was good. So.
Wait a minute. It's not good for you? No.
Moderation. We keep talking about that.
Yeah. 2 Marlboros a day.
Yeah. Just keep it there. You'll be all right.
Potentially. Depends on how long you live.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, definitely. Dose definitely makes the poison, and it goes for the sun. It goes for water. It goes for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, similar to your snakes, right? Like fasting is probably beneficial, but you still have to feed them. Like they need to go through a heavier feeding period then, it can't just be not feeding them all the time or very sparsely. Okay. So God, I hope that answered that, Yuki. I'm sorry. We went way off topic. So how far are we from UVB emitting LEDs? Stephen Lewis.
Yeah, so not far. So ZooMed produced a UVB LED that does have a fair amount of UVA2. And they also paid to have a study done. It's a fairly small study, but it's enough of a study that that Francis Baines is willing to say that light doesn't appear to be dangerous, which is a huge leap forward from everything we've had before. So it's not enough of a study where Thomas is going to say, you should use these, but it's enough to, not tell you not to use it. They're not going to say, no, that's bad for you, because we've got enough info to say, okay, it's not going to harm them from best we can tell on the studies. So those will be expensive. I think Exoterra is using the same similar diodes. Nobody's admitting exactly which diodes they are, but us that are used to reading spectral graphs, we can kind of tell when we look at the spectral graph which diode it is. I've got some UVA2 diodes I'm playing with. And hope to be able to put together in a UVB LED. So it's the industry is actively pushing forward towards it. I think we're several years from them being, recommended. Maybe 2 to 3 years before they're actually recommended by reptile lighting scientists. I'm still putting my money on it. I'm spending money researching diodes and buying diodes in the UVA2 range. They're expensive. They're not really of use outside of the reptile world, so the diodes are expensive. UVB diodes are used for all kinds of things in industrial application. So those we've had for cheap for a long time. UVA diodes, same thing, are used for all kinds of industrial applications. UVA1, UVA2 though it's a pretty specialty niche thing. So they're expensive. It's going to be a while before those prices come down, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's just a question I have, because I know that for UVB T5 tubes are sort of the standard. Mm-hmm. Are they all created equally? Can you I mean, that obviously this episode is brought to you by Exoterra, and they
make great ones.
Yeah. And with the help of Thomas, I know. And great tubes there. Yeah. But are you is that tube just, and I know Arcadia has great tubes as well. And are those just as good as whatever you go on Walmart.com and you type in and it's UVB reptile light made by, whatever, reptile man,
not at all, actually. So what spectrum a fluorescent puts out is dictated by the phosphors used on the lamp. And that's going to vary from lamp to lamp. It's what makes the new Exoterra lamps have such an amazing spectrum. They're the phosphor formula that they're using is excellent. So you could have a T5 lamp that has an awful spectrum with like no UVA2 almost and totally UVB or even no UVB, or that's why we really depend on these third-party studies from people like Thomas and Serena and Francis to tell us which lamps are good and which lamps are not good, because there's terrible lamps out there. A common thing to do for these cheap brands is to utilize fluorescents that were just repurposed skin therapy lamps that medical field uses as therapies for things like I can't remember the name of it, for different kinds of skin conditions, really? Which don't make great reptile lamps, but they can get them, 1 billion of them for $2. So they sell them as reptile lamps.
Wow. And so when you're dealing with something that is really high in UVB and low in UVA2, right, is what you said?
Yeah.
That's where you get into the danger zone, right?
Yeah, of imbalanced vitamin synthesis. So, you want that balance. You need the gas and the brakes. You don't want more brakes or more gas.
I'm all gas, no brakes.
Go big or go home, man.
Yeah. My sister-in-law told me once when I was getting back into reptiles, she was like, you don't half-ass anything. You whole-ass everything.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it's an ADHD thing or what, but I'm the same. Like, once I get into something, it's like, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, dude. Like, I'm so dumb, man. I bought a $1,500 motorcycle and I have put so much money into this. I could have bought like a 6-year-old Harley, like slightly used, like probably less than 10,000 miles. And I'd be at where I am now with a 27-year-old Harley. Like, I don't know why I'm so dumb. I need to be kind to myself. Yeah. I did go to therapy today. But like, I sit there and I'm like, I'm telling my wife, I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm and like you said, you whole ass everything, and it's like, I'm like, well, if I did that, if I'm getting new tires put on, I should probably get the wheels powder coated while they're off. Because it just makes sense. Yeah,
it makes perfect sense. Yeah, I did that. I got into road cycling and decided, well, if I really want to do this, I should build one from scratch.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God, Casey.
$3,000 later, I have a $900 bike.
Oh, dude, how many people do that? Like, because that's 100% me.
Just
Is,
the cool ones.
Yeah. Yep. It's like, it's so funny how we do that.
Yeah. But
yeah.
we learn a lot. You learn a lot from it.
Oh yeah. I said to my wife, I'm like, it's a $1,500 Harley. How can I say no? Is the carburetor dumping gas? Yes. Does it look outdated and corny? Yes. Is there too much chrome? Yes. But I can fix all that.
Yeah.
Thousands of dollars later, I can fix all that.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All right. So Paul, he said, what does Casey see as common mistakes / misconceptions among keepers at various levels of husbandry? Hold on. He goes on.
Yeah.
He says, like, we know it's easy to predict that new folks won't be familiar with various lamp types or what they do. But what about keepers with more experience, whether it's the I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm not going to change it crowd, or I've been doing this for 3 years and now I'm a gatekeeper crowd?
Yeah. So, there is a lot of, I've been doing this for 30 years, and there's a lot of the gatekeepers. There's a lot on both sides. I think being open-minded on both ends of those spectrums is an issue. The people that have been doing it the same way for 30 years, they find something that works for them and they refuse to change anything about it, no matter what anybody or science says. And the people that are the 3-year-in gatekeepers, they learn a set of rules, and those are just the rules all the time. And anybody that is not following those rules is wrong. So I think, on both sides, just being more open-minded and willing to accept new information or hear new points of view is really the biggest thing that I think anybody can do, no matter how long you've been doing it. It's, people have reasons for the things that they do. And sometimes they're really good reasons.
Yeah. It's, and that, so he was kind of, talking about the, people with a ton of experience keeping and
Yeah.
the newer people that, are a bit more, dogmatic, and, it's sort of there's probably a nuanced middle ground there to find, I would assume.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for 30-year snake keepers, the common thing is just having a really being very averse to heat lamps or light of any kind is pretty common. And then for new keepers, yeah, it's, these are the lights you must use and only those, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the big ones you see a lot is the I got my animal an 8x2x2 enclosure, and because on paper that's what it says this animal should be in, and then you see the construction of it and it's like, okay, it's 8 feet long, which they can use that space,
Yeah.
but then it's 2 feet high and they can only use 4 inches of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just empty space, and it's like, so on paper it looks good and you've ticked the box, but then it's kind of that, you have to figure out, how am I going to utilize this space now? So that way it's actual space that is being used. 'Cause otherwise may as well be in a tub,
Yeah. Yeah. Usability is a huge thing in the zoo industry. They even can apply like numerics to how usable a space is. And they have all these parameters to basically quantify how usable a space is for an animal and how much an animal does use that space. Can't remember the name for it, but in the zoo world, they're pretty cognizant of that.
See, we need to apply that more.
Yeah.
I feel,
Yeah.
because you see it so much and you don't want to be mean.
Yeah. And somebody with a 8-foot enclosure your animal's in too small of an enclosure. Yeah, but his enclosure is a lot better designed than your 8-foot enclosure.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I'm sure you could find instances where people have like a 4x2x2 that is a better living space than a 6x3x3, because of the, the levels in it, and you're sort of,
usability.
you're multiplying the usability.
Yeah.
That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we need more of an emphasis on that. That way it's
Yeah.
not just box checking. You're actually like, okay, let me get this space and then utilize this space so it's best for the animal.
Right. Yeah. I think a somewhat neglected factor.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it's one of those things where you don't want to come across as mean to people, but at the like that, I guess that's more of a DM. That's something where you could reach out privately and be like, hey, don't take this the wrong way.
I think that's always a better, putting people down in front of other people is just the worst thing you can do to somebody. If you want them to shut down, then do that. Because treating somebody like a human is really the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't just hit them with the laughing emoji and then go into the comments and be like, "This is stupid."
Right? Yeah, exactly.
All right. So Jenna said, "I would love to know how to incorporate beneficial lighting, not just in an enclosure, but also on a room scale for free roaming snakes that spend a good deal of their time outside their enclosures."
Yeah, I mean, window light is probably your best bet because in a room size, if you're looking to replicate the sun in something the size of a room, you're going to spend a fortune. 8-foot ceilings are about the minimum, and a snake 8 foot away from a light, I mean, you need a very bright light to get that any measurable infrared or UV down to the 8 feet away, which zoos do and you can do, but that's a fortune, and I don't think necessarily worth it. I think for free roaming, good windows is really your best bet, and just having the appropriate lighting in the enclosure that they can utilize when they are in the enclosure is really your best bet there, because trying to turn a room into an enclosure, it's doable, but that will not be cheap and not be easy.
I used to have a black and white an Argentine tegu, and we gave her essentially a bedroom, and I can't remember how I did it, but I had a heat lamp and lamps and everything like suspended over a basking area.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just made a frame, so she could meander about the room and then go and get under the basking stuff. So I guess if you were to
lizards are a bit more cognizant of basking and actually basking. So if you set up a really bright area with properly measured lighting, most lizards will actually use that and actually go over and utilize the basking, the sunspot in the room. Snakes, much less so. Not
They're
impossible.
Probably going to go
less.
for security before they go for the heat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Even if it's detrimental to their well-being.
When you let a snake out of their enclosure, they don't spend a ton of time in the very center of the room.
Yeah, dude. Last weekend, I let my Argentine boa Nagini out on Friday, and I didn't put her away until Sunday.
Oh,
and I know it sounds crazy, but it's really not, because there's all these storage bins, or not bins, but there's like storage cubbies to put bins in under her enclosure.
Yeah.
And she just goes into those and just stays in one of them like all weekend.
Oh, wow.
And she hasn't eaten in like 3 weeks, so she's not digesting in the room. The ambient room temperature still gets up to like 79, 80 degrees.
Totally comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, hey, if that's what she wants, and
if it's snake proofed, you're good.
Yeah, the room is relatively safe. She's gotten into some shenanigans in the past, but nothing that was like, oh my God, she could have died.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, she knocked that thing over and that was annoying.
Yeah, I've had to disassemble a couch entirely to get a snake out. So because
That's
I fell asleep, but yeah. So yeah,
couches are scary too because the
it's
springs and
worst.
everything.
The springs and everything. I literally had to get the screwdriver out and literally just take the couch apart piece by piece. It was such a nightmare, all because I got too comfortable. She was laying on my chest. I fell asleep. I woke up. I was like, oh crap, and I could touch her, but I couldn't pull her out, and it just. Yeah, after that, I'm very cognizant of staying awake when I've got her out.
I feel like they know when you can't pull them out too.
Yeah,
they're just like, oh, I'm anchored.
Yeah.
You can't.
Oh, I could see, man. I could pull open the cushion and see her tail just wrapped around the little support.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, so one more from Paul.
Yeah.
Casey has mentioned using inexpensive white LEDs in enclosure or in enclosures. That doesn't sound like something that would have a picture of a bearded dragon on the box. So how do I know it's appropriate?
Sure. So because these UVA1 LEDs are expensive, Phonolux, mine, these are expensive lights, and halides are expensive and problematic. Even just increasing the brightness of your enclosure, even if it's just a regular LED, which to them appears colored, increasing the brightness is good because I think we fail to realize just how dark it is in those enclosures sometimes, because our eyes really can adjust quite a bit from going outside to inside. The expansion and contraction we can get on our eyes is much bigger than most reptiles. Or all reptiles, really. So, a heat light and a UV, you're probably only getting like 4,000 lux, 3,000 lux, when an even moderate day outside is 70, 80,000 lux.
Whoa.
So an enormous difference. So even though the light is technically colored, a normal white LED will increase the brightness and at least stimulate some of those hormones a little better, and circadian rhythms would be the biggest advantage. It kind of locks those in a lot better, and some hormones. So if I was picking out a white light, people really like to focus on the CCT or the kelvins. So, oh, you need 6,500 kelvins. Not really. 4,000, anywhere from 4,000 to 6,500 is completely fine. CRI it stands for color rendering index. So that really, CRI only applies to our eyes. So how well a light can render colors, which really is linked pretty closely to how well it imitates the sun. It's not exact, but that's a pretty close link. So to our eyes, a CRI of 99 looks a lot like the sun. That's not going to be the case for your reptile. It's still not going to look like the sun to them. But that said, the further down the CRI scale you go, the more colored it's going to appear to the reptile. The less sun-like that portion of light will appear. So, I mean, I think anything with a CRI in the 90s, anything with a CCT, I don't know, 4,000 to 6,500 or so is going to be fine. I think the biggest thing is getting one that's strong enough to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So for like a Euromastix or something, I mean, I would put all the money into the brightness of it, and less emphasis on the CCT and the CRI, and just try and get the brightest light you can get. I mean, I've helped people with big enclosures, and we just used giant Harbor Freight shop lights.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, the CCT is not terrible, the CRI is not terrible, and they're very bright and they're reasonably priced. So it's a lot less. That's why, like, this is one of those things, new keepers, like a 3-year in new keeper. Oh, it's got to be a Jungle Dawn. Jungle Dawn is not really special. Like, it's, yeah, they're good. They're decent LEDs. They're good LEDs, and they're bright, which is great. But certainly you can find other lights from other makers that are brighter for less money. So yeah, that's kind of a criteria. It's less, since you're not providing actual sun-like light to them anyways, it's a bit less picky than people like to think it is.
Okay. Dude, what's up with, do you know anything about saltwater aquariums? Why do I see so many saltwater aquariums that are blue? And I'm like, I look at that and I'm like, do the fish like that?
Yeah, I don't know a ton about saltwater aquariums. I do, from what I've seen, I think they think the blue light is beneficial to the plants and the coral.
Oh, the coral, yeah.
So I know blue penetrates a little further into water. So yeah, they've got their own world. It's crazy because in the reptile world, when we see a light and it's $200, people lose their mind. They're like, that's absurd. And if you go into an aquarium shop, you'll see $5,000 lights.
Oh, dude,
and like people drop it, no problem. It's wild.
Yeah, my buddy Richie that I work with, he was setting up his aquarium and he's like, oh, I'm getting these lights that are on Facebook Marketplace. They're like, he's charging $150 a pop and they're like $600 a piece lights. And I'm like, oh my God, dude.
And that's like the low end for saltwater people. Yeah. People, they go wild in the saltwater world with their lighting. And haven't done enough research to know exactly what kind of benefits they're getting or how necessary it is.
Yeah, I need to look into that because I see a lot of people that have aquariums and they're like just this like blue. And I'm like, that, like, it's not even like visually appealing. Like, it makes the coral pop, but it's like you're missing like all the others. Like, it doesn't look like nature, you know?
Yeah, I know. And I don't know how effective this is or how the science actually pans out, but I do know a lot of the saltwater people use stronger particular wavelengths to help with growth in their plants and their coral.
Okay.
But I don't know if there's science behind that or if that's just how the dogma of the hobby. I have no idea.
All right, dude. Well, is there anything else you'd like to touch on?
No, I think we covered a fair amount. It's been, that was great. Go our website, solreptile.com, Facebook, Sol Reptile, Instagram, Sol Reptile. I'm terrible about staying up posting, but if I do post something, it'll be, it won't be worthless. It's usually either really good information or a new product or something, some kind of really cool observation, scientific paper. It'll be something like that if I do post. And so dude, I won't fill your feed.
I appreciate you so much for your availability that you've had on the Discord, sure. On the Expert and the Idiot Discord. And if anybody signs up, for the Patreon, you're on there, which is awesome. You're such a valuable resource. And
Thank you.
You have so much knowledge. And so before we go, sell the Vision LED, like tell people why it's superior, why it's the best one on the market. And I know that you're a very humble guy, but I want you to do that before we sign off.
Sure. So it is the brightest UVA1 LED on the market by basically double. It's got twice the lumens of the next UVA1 LED. Beyond the brightness, though, Quentin Dishman, Reptile Lighting, put out an academic paper about which lights appear more like sunlight to different reptiles. And different reptiles have different, I think they went through about 20 different species of reptile. It varies through all reptiles, but over the average of all those reptiles, my light did appear to be more like sunlight than any other source of artificial light. So it will be more sun-like and brighter than anything you can get right now. So that's my sell.
Awesome, man. All right, dude. I appreciate you so much. This episode is brought to you by Sol Reptile, and I appreciate that, man. And awesome. Keep doing what you're doing and pushing the envelope and innovating and creating new products, man.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you much too.